I'm here with Oliver Benson. He's a visual artist. First of all, this is all his art behind him, and he's basically like a machine. he can do. It's amazing. So tell us about these visions. Like you had a series of almost out of body experience type vision things. How did this come about?
Yes, some of them were, in fact, out of body experiences. Not all of them, but it started because I was really sad after my father died. I was about 19, and I happened very suddenly, and at the same time I left school, and I just didn't really want to be. I didn't want to be in college. I didn't want to. Didn't feel sure about a career track, and I just needed to have some experience that was sort of how to put it, like profound, I think. And I started, read about spirituality, and at some point I encountered techniques for astral projection, and I started to practice them. And then something happened all of a sudden, and I started having visions. I would kind of go into a trance, and sometimes things would come through the walls and carry me away somewhere, like through the walls or through the ceiling or the floor. Sometimes I would just float out of my body and go out a window or something. And
would this all be at night, or is this just like
no, during the day? Yeah, it was always during the day, I think, actually. I mean, once or twice it happened very early in the morning, but usually it was around 2 in the afternoon. I don't know why exactly, but I think, and by the way, it's been years and years since this happened. It was a daily occurrence for about 1.5 years, and then it just stopped, and it's never really happened again since then.
But this has been the inspiration for much of your art, right?
Yes, it's true. Though there were some earlier experiences, and it's funny, I hadn't really thought about it until just this morning. I don't think, well, for example, you can't really see it, but there's a painting on the wall here, which I can show some images similar to it in a little bit. An early experience I had was some years before that. I was probably about 16 or 17, and I was had come home from work during the summer, and I was looking at the ceiling, just sort of resting on my bed, and something started to come out of the ceiling. It was sort of, we had an old house that at some point there was water damage from a bathroom on the floor above, and the paint was all chipped. So it was kind of a random pattern of different paint colors on the ceiling. It had never quite been fixed. And I was staring at it and just resting. And all of a sudden it started to become three-dimensional and move, and all of these faces started to come out of it. And they weren't talking or anything, but they were kind of alive. And it was kind of fascinating, like completely fascinating.
Sounds very psychedelic, but you were not on psychedelics.
No, it was, but it does sound that way, actually. I think it's the same kind of thing. It's sort of, some trigger sort of went off, maybe the natural sort of psychedelic kind of
DMT level
came out of my, sort of circulating in my brain or something. And because it's just like the same kind of thing. And it was really a striking experience that kind of came out of nowhere for me. I mean, and that was probably one of the first really big inspirations for making pictures. And I kind of have a sort of series of things that, that are closely related to that I've worked on over the years. And I have a couple of examples of them, but it's just sort of an idea that's come back to me. And it's a little bit like, there's actually a name for it in psychology, which I can't remember, but it's related to seeing faces and things.
Oh, pareidolia.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Pattern and what you have that, you said.
Yeah, I can see faces and everything. Like I can't even look at a plug, like a socket, without seeing like I mean, I can't look at anything. I see faces all the time.
Yeah, I understand. I'm kind of like that too. Clouds, yeah, plugs, machines, cars, everything.
Yeah.
Tree bark, like everywhere. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Do you know why that's? I know I read about it at some point. I'm sure there's some interesting
Oh, in my
scientific
opinion, it's just like, I mean, I I think that it's kind of material reductionists being douchebags trying to talk to people who are more creative, who can like kind of see more to this dimension than others, you know. So it's kind of, it's like I think it's a terminology that's a stifling tool, in my opinion. But
Yeah, I think I think you're probably right about that. I mean, at least that makes sense to me too. There's something, explanations are never really satisfying because in a sense, it's sort of like a faint echo of the real experience. And you're like, well, okay, fine.
They also have this tendency, this is all of our fellow societal members of humanity have this thing where it's like, if we label something, if we, like, for example, the human body, if we like go in and we cut stuff and we look at the cell in the most micro little way we possibly can or whatever, and we go like this, I'm giving this a name and this a name and this a name,
Right.
that does not thereby mean you understand it. Just because you name stuff doesn't mean you understand it, but we have a tendency to label and name and categorize everything, and thereby thinking things like, oh, if this happens, and then we say we gave it a name, that's the explanation. The explanation is, oh, that's pareidolia. That's pareidolia. It's like,
Right,
oh,
right.
oh, really? Okay, but that doesn't explain anything. You just thank you for your vocabulary lesson. That's sorry. I get on these tangents.
No, I like it. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think it's not hard to understand, and I think your answer to that or your description of it is accurate. It's not hard to understand why there's the impulse to do that kind of thing, but the cost of doing it, what you lose in that exchange, is maybe not so easy to understand, right? You put a name on it, you say you've got it figured out, and it's like you've closed the door.
Yeah.
And what have you lost by putting in a box inside your head?
I recently had a Twitter argument with a bunch of people about gravity. Like, it's like that asteroid that they were showing, like had all these little rocks on it. And I was like, that's kind of like, I just wanted to talk about it. I don't have an answer. I just like, that's a little bit weird. Have you ever heard of gravity? Gravity. They like put like some John Mayer song of like him singing gravity. Like it's like, okay, you guys, a-holes, let me just tell you, what you basically are saying is like, there any force that you don't understand, you're just like blanketing like gravity. And it's like when you really start looking into a lot of stuff like asthma, you know what that just means? You have a breathing disease. They don't really know. It's like everything is like, it's that label thing. So I've been trying to unlearn a lot. I've been really working hard on trying to because like I also am a person who's a lucid dreamer, and who I haven't had year-long visions quite to the extent that we're going to get into that yours are, but I'm trying not to look for answers from the outside world, because all they do is try to keep you from looking further.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it the case that it's sort of well, it makes me think of two things. One of them being the importance of free inquiry. If you can't ask questions, or if there's a lot of pressure to not ask questions, or to not leave certain subjects open for examination, it's sort of like, I think people do it to themselves and they do it to other people too. It's sort of like trying to control their own thoughts and other people's thoughts and kind of manage everything, instead of allowing things to be open and discussed without rushing to a conclusion about what it means, what it is, so we can, stop, what would be the word for it? It's a way of avoiding uncertainty.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Which is understandable, right? Because like in some ways, I noticed this, like if I'm babysitting a kid or something, and they like want to ask but like a million questions about something, like there is a tendency to want, like we have a tendency to want to explain. what we're in, and it's like there's a level of I don't know, there's another level of awareness that you have to get to be like comfortable with the unknown and to like really embrace it, because like a lot of us are kind of like, oh no, like it's like we like familiar, as humans we kind of like things that are familiar, so that's a problem sometimes with that exact thing.
Yeah, what is I thought before, human beings like hate change, but they love novelty or something like that. It's sort of, there's always a paradox there. It's like, okay, I don't want to be threatened, but at the same time, I don't want to be bored. Or, I want an explanation, so everything's clear, but then it's never satisfying because it's not really ever comprehensive. And I was thinking this morning, I wanted to ask you, your thoughts too. It's sort of like part of the problem with things like this is the closing down of all the faculties of the mind. It's like if you seek a solid conclusion too quickly, I guess what I've been experiencing lately is that it's sort of like the mind is capable of just anything. Like it's not just invention, but it's sort of like being able to, things that I'm going to have trouble coming up with a really clear example, but I have the feeling that there are all these things. Maybe it's because I live now kind of out in the wilderness. I'm not around people so much, and I'm not around buildings and machines and all the stuff that I was accustomed to in the city. My environment is mostly nature. And it's sort of like I don't, it feels uncontained and just completely free, and anything is possible. Like the mind isn't limited in what it can do. It's not limited to my body. It's not limited to really anything. That I'm kind of getting too far off here, but should have maybe tried to.
What I think about when you were saying that, it's I kind of think about this. There's this game I played before where it's almost like the game is Snake, or it's like these little bubbles, and then like you have to eat another bubble, and then you get bigger, and then you get bigger, and then like it's kind of a game of you're in a universe like this of all these weird little bubbles, and then to grow you like eat all these other little bubbles. And the thing is in this game, like you can get eaten by a bigger bubble or whatever. So the problem with that game is like I feel like a lot of that is what being incarnated as a human has kind of done. Like we're playing in this universe with a bunch of other people, but some like corporations or ideas or people are like this, and they're swallowed. Like if you're a brand new star that's just little and you're like, it's really hard to sometimes. I feel like it's almost like hard to get to express your fullest expression of your own individuality self without a polluted filter put on you. And so I think it's really interesting that you're kind of living out of the influence of being swallowed up by a big city and being kind of, I also think about like if you look at us on a map or something, we live in like these cities and we have these highways, and there's so much of the land on the planet that we don't ever even cross into, because that's not the allotted place that we can go. And like I think honestly with the mind, it's like in dream time, I can fly, I can create mountains, I can like I can create just like the most crazy stuff. There's colors that aren't on our visual spectrum, like in dream time, that aren't here. There's all kinds of like different kinds of plants and animals and vegetations, and like there's ineffable things. And I think that the mind is really, I don't know what element of it, but what's the difference between, like your mind and your spirit and your soul and your like what your essence of like life energy. I don't really know where the separation is or isn't, like when you're in the machinery. But I definitely have the sense that we are not fully tapping into it. And some of us maybe are like on the peripheral edges of tapping into what more we can create than others. But yeah.
Well, do you think, I don't know, I feel like the thing that's well, distinguishing between different levels of consciousness or types of consciousness, mind, soul, spirit, all this stuff, is all secondary, because there's something which is, there's an aspect of us which is everything. Our consciousness, it's our bodies, yes, it's our brains, but it's more than both of those things. It's like, I'm the building, I'm this building that I'm in, I'm the tree over there, I'm you, I'm all people, anything that I can conceive of, plus everything that I can't even conceive of or see. Ultimately, I'm not separate from any of those things. So it's kind of, I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the mind touching or being everything. And mind is just a word too, because it's not exactly thoughts. It's something else. It's like consciousness maybe, which is not the same thing as thought. It's vital. It's something so basic that it's real, that really is everything. Or it's,
yeah, I think that's like the monad, like the idea of the same like energy that ignites every single one of my cells and makes them split is pervasive and running through everything. Like, we're all interconnected. And I guess I had a hard time. I was actually talking to this lady who's a channel the other day, who's a good friend of mine, Katie, in the course, and I had her interview before this. She would be on my channel. She'll be like the interview right before yours comes up. But anyway, she kind of was. I was kind of talking about how if we're all one thing, if we're all the oneness, and I had a giant psychedelic experience where I felt I was in that oneness, and the one takeaway I had was, it was like the oneness separated itself into infinite possibilities in order to experience itself and to learn more about itself, because it didn't know why it existed. It knows it always has, it knows it always will, but even it in itself didn't know why existence existed at all. But then she her perspective was that even though we're all connected, there is individuality. Like, you do have a signature essence to yourself. And I will say, when I've experienced a merge, I didn't really it was kind of the worst and the best thing at the same time. I do, being out of the merge, prefer having an individuality, like having an other.
I understand. Yeah.
Thing. Yeah.
This actually relates really closely to my first experiences with the astral projection and visions, because there was kind of a boundary space, which I might have to just sort of describe it in kind of narrative terms. I would start by lying down and controlling my breathing and relaxing, and then there was this sort of thing that would happen where there would be a giant rushing sound, like if you got caught in a huge wave if you were swimming, and it would sort of wash over me. Actually, what it sounded like exactly was like a 747 flying right overhead, like incredibly loud and sort of completely surrounding me, a big whoosh of sound. And it would, the first few times it happened.
Can you hear me really well? Because I had my microphone turned the opposite way.
Yeah, I think I can hear you okay.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I hadn't been like, yeah, because I was like going like, my light's not on. Oh, it's because my microphone's the opposite way.
It's a little bit clearer now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I think, oh yeah, well, it was a terrifying experience. It was so physical, this sense of sound and pressure, like a plane flying overhead, like a giant plane flying overhead, that it would shock me completely out of the state of consciousness I was in, and I'd bolt up, and I couldn't, then I just would have to go about the rest of my day. But it happened repeatedly, like day after day, the same thing, where I begin to feel a separation from my body, and then this, like crushing, crashing sound would come, and then I would be right back in,
Okay, so let's get into this a little bit. So you talked about how you think you went to hell.
Yes, that did happen a little bit after, once I sort of got used to this, this problem of the rushing sound. After I got used to it enough that I didn't, shock out of it, I would, then my consciousness started to go out of my body and, kind of float around the room like a bubble, sort of. And I would look at my body and sort of, say, oh, okay, yeah, well, now I just had to get past that little fear of it, sort of like, your consciousness is leaving your body and it's frightening, So once I kind of got used to that, then I could kind of travel, But the first thing that happened the next phase after that was that things started to show up, like entities, and most of them were terrifying, like very threatening. So it was almost like another test, or another hurdle to get over.
How did you deal with the threatening entities? Like, were you scared?
Yes, absolutely terrified. The first one I remember was like a giant demon coming out of the ceiling, surrounded in flames. It looked like a Tibetan kind of mahakala, it was, completely terrifying.
Do you want to show, you say you have some images similar to that one, right?
I think
I remember you showing me some that were kind of like the Tibetan thing.
I have, let me see if I have anything quite like it not as such, no. I do have an early, well, it's actually a fairly recent painting that's based on another experience where, it got a little more pleasant after I got, used to it. Like the demons started to sometimes become more helpful, or more, have a more gentle appearance, or a more helpful appearance, like not so terrifying, still formidable and powerful, but not quite so off-putting. So I have an image
the
of that.
off-putting, like the gentleman behind your shoulder there.
Yes, that was actually based on one of the visions too. That was truly awful. It was hell. It was. I was dragged down into the sort of a what do you call it? It was almost like a vertical cave that just went down for miles, and I was dragged the whole way down and ended up in a giant underground enclosure, big enough to hold a city inside it. And this guy was in the middle, and he was presiding over a sort of millions of shades, sort of entities, or actually it was a lot like I don't know if you've ever read Dante or the Odyssey, when Odysseus went into the underworld. There are shades everywhere, which are like people, but not
like
quite.
shadow people, you mean?
Yeah, like shadows almost, they're sort of people, but sort of not. It's like they're the souls of the dead, sort of. And this place was just filled with them. And then, but I was different because I wasn't dead. And so he noticed me right away and grabbed me and put me in his mouth and chewed me up.
Oh God!
It was completely, utterly terrifying. But the good part, it had a nice ending though, because he swallowed me, and then when I was burning in his stomach, which was all, like molten metal, like a pool of molten metal with flames and smoke and everything. Then an angel showed up and just took me right out of there. And then I was out in a sort of a field somewhere that was like, I don't know, a perfect sort of early summer day. Everything was green and everything was okay. Up until then, it was terrible. But that's, yeah, I mean, that was one of the, I mean, I literally had probably 200 or 300 visions like this. And I don't remember all of them because I decided not to write any of them down or record them really in any way, but some of them came through in paintings, because.
So did you ever get used to it? Did you ever get better at handling like these terrifying experiences?
Yeah, I mean, usually it just had to do with just accepting it, like, okay, this is trusting it, I think I would say. And I couldn't control what would happen. I mean, a few times there, I mean, I did have a certain amount of agency, but largely it was to just accept what was happening. You know, sometimes I would actively do things, but I couldn't always do that. Often it was more like just accept what's happening and go along with it and trust that it's, you know, for the good ultimately, even if it's terrifying. Or physical pain was actually a big part of it too, like or the, let's say,
The
non
sensation of burning or being in his stomach, or, you know.
yes, yeah, or falling down. I especially remember falling down that sort of vertical shaft, that it was all jagged with rocks, and the pain like of bouncing off the rocks and being dragged, and it was like awful, you know, like physically I can still feel the sensation of it. I mean, obviously it was not my body doing it, but the pain sort of the sensation of pain was still there. So the fear, you know, fear and pain were like big parts of it. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't want to go too far with it, but I feel like there are people who've been through, you know, had terrible accidents or terrible medical problems, who have dealt with tremendous amounts of pain in their physical body. And they somehow learn to do it. I don't know how. I can't imagine, because I'm a wimp. You know, if I get a splinter, I'm, you know, very upset. But well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where I was going with that.
Oh, but you were saying that, like, I guess it's interesting because, like, they're gonna have to learn how to accept it, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking. There's something about accepting or not resisting. I mean, the resistance makes things worse, you know.
Yeah.
That was my experience, resistance to the phenomena I was experiencing, the things I was seeing, the kind of interaction with the entities. It was resistance mostly that was, I mean, actually I could say it was, at another very early experience where I was sort of in almost like a psychiatric hospital, but
In real life you were, or in the vision?
no, in a vision, but it
Okay.
was sort of like an, you know, underground wrecked building full of these kind of shade-like creatures, but they were also a little like zombies. They were hostile. They weren't just kind of around. They were actually trying to get me, and I had to sort of call down, you know, my higher self, so to speak, or something. I had to take action. So I didn't just accept because it was like they were going to kill me, you know. So I had to decide to do something about it and embody, you know, sort of like my higher self. And that made it, you know, that's something that happened a number of times also, and was, I think, really important. That was a necessary, you know, use of agency rather than just being passive or accepting what's going on. There are also times where I needed to be active, so to speak.
So did you consciously try to astral project the entire year and a half every time you would do this, or would this, like, you did it at the beginning and then it would just naturally keep on happening?
The latter, yes. After I sort of established a kind of daily, I don't know, sort of schedule almost, because it really was like a schedule. I would just lie down and, okay, it's about time. Sometimes sitting, but usually lying on the floor.
Man, why would you even want to do that after some of your experiences? Some of them are great, but some of them are like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, and you know, it's funny. I haven't really thought of that before. I think the thing is they were so compelling, and there was something where I knew that there was a kind of process taking place that was psychical and, you know, worth going through. So even though sometimes they were very terrible, but afterwards there was something really compelling about it. It was like, you know, I suppose maybe like somebody traveling to a dangerous place. I mean, I've heard that journalists, for example, like who go to disaster zones, are like get addicted to it. Like they need to, in order to feel alive, they have to go to a dangerous place. And it might have been a little bit of that kind of thing too. You know, because I didn't maybe feel entirely alive at that time, so experiencing this kind of thing was like,
Were you hoping to meet your dad?
Yes, that was, it's funny, because the last vision that I had, an angel carried me way, way up into the sky, and almost like I was going to go to heaven. And then it sort of we went through the blue and it started to get dark, like we were going out into space. And we slowed down, and then, he brought me back down and kind of let me onto the ground. And I said, next time, like maybe tomorrow, I'd really love it if you'd let me see my dad, because I miss it. And I never had another one after that. So I don't know if I maybe shouldn't have asked, but I actually did, about 20 years later, have a experience where I did meet him again. He was
your
fine.
dad or that angel?
My dad.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a kind of, not a vision exactly, but a very, very lucid dream. Something that was kind of like, in a dream it's just real.
Yeah.
It was like that. And, he was, had a little reunion, and I'm very happy for it. That was about 10 years ago. But yeah, this is it's taking me way back, because this was more than 30 years ago. But it was a really, thank you it's nice to talk about it, because your questions are leading me. It's obvious that you've experienced this kind of thing too, because it's kind of coming back to me in a way that it hasn't for a really long time.
Looking back on it now, would you say that, and you're welcome, I'm glad to do this with you, but would you say that, what do you think's going on? Like, do you think these are realms? Do you think, how real do you feel the astral realm is?
I think it's a really good question, because it's almost as though you can examine that from a sort of scientific, psychological perspective and get some very good answers, but not entirely satisfying ones. And at the same time, you can take it completely literally and say, there are these places, and they're as real as, the room that I'm standing in. But that doesn't I don't find that totally satisfying either, because they're not real in the same way that the physical world around me is real.
But I do find it interesting that it's like, for example, like, I don't know if maybe you had just read Dante, or you were influenced by that, but there's multiple people have a description of a hell-like place that has the light. I mean, that like, it's an archetype for a reason. Like, so, or I don't know, the angel thing, like a lot of people have these different, like, similar, views of what that is. So that's weird that there's almost like shared astral worlds.
Yeah, I think the thing is, it's sort of like what we were initially talking about. Ultimately, you lose too much by trying to be really reductive about it and say it's this or that. I think that it's what I concluded about it at the time, and I remember this because I had read Dante, and I had read Milton and other things, and Blake, and I could see that was affecting what I was experiencing. The literature I was reading. The Book of Revelations was also something I read over and over again, because it was so similar to what I was experiencing, and there was kind of a feedback between the two things, like my conscious understanding of the literature, but then also that literature was sort of affecting the nature of the experience, or maybe not the nature, but the qualities of it. And in the end, I think what I concluded was what's really important is the process itself. It's not having an absolute understanding of what any of it is. It's just that the process is a natural one, and I should just go through it or undergo it, because, let's say, its value is not defined by my ability to define my understanding of it is not the same as my experience of it. Maybe that's the right way to put it.
Right. Like, have you ever tried to do this again? Like, have you ever thought that you needed more? Like, have you ever been like, okay, you know what? I'm going to start doing astral projection exercises again.
I've thought it, but I haven't done it.
Because I'm sure
I
you
thought,
could.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I think the thing was, it was such a so compelling, and also it was almost like this. It was I'm not going to say the center of my life, but it was almost like that. It was very important. It was sort of like a daily. It's kind of the anchor around which I scheduled my whole life. At the time.
So, and I find it so, the gift that you have to humanity is that you can translate it in such a physical way that a lot of people wouldn't be able to. If they saw, scary dude behind you, they would be like, yeah, like it looks like they could, like, you're able to translate what you see in such a precise way. That is really, I mean, particularly, maybe that's one of the reasons, like, why these things happen to you or something. I mean, yeah.
That's a part of what I thought too. I feel like I accepted, or just I didn't struggle to keep doing it, because I thought, well, okay, it's not happening anymore. That means that it's time for me to devote my energy to painting, because now I can sort of communicate those experiences and
Well, there's
you know,
also the concept of if you knock and someone answers, like, why do you have to keep on ringing the doorbell?
it's a good, yeah, it was sort of or what is somebody said, if you catch a fish, you don't need the net afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and painting, honestly, is so time consuming, it's so difficult. I had to learn how to do it. I didn't have training, so the amount of time and effort and energy required to do that work was just completely consuming. So
then that's a good leadway into, well, show us some of your images and see like what comes up with some of the themes. Cause yeah, you're very, like, let's let them see like how talented you are here.
well, maybe I'll start with this first picture. Is that coming up properly?
Yeah, it is. So it's an oil painting.
No, this is a charcoal drawing.
Oh.
Did this in 1988. And this would have been just a couple of years after that experience I mentioned, lying on the bed and looking up at the ceiling.
Oh.
And so this was kind of the first attempt to translate that into a picture, and sort of a self-portrait. And then it's almost like he's wearing a crown, which you can see. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but up above here, it's like a person, and there's an echoing effect going to his sides, and then this sort of crown and these kind of face-like forms.
Yeah, even on on their actual forehead, I see a whole other face, and in between, I see other faces.
Yeah, this was kind of sort of I saw on the ceiling, and but I think the idea was sort of like looking at it, and at the same time, it's depicting not just the thing you see, but the way you feel while looking at it, or the way I felt while looking at it.
Yeah.
And I think after that, I did. Well, here's another sort of it's as I've said before, kind of a series. This is just a sketch that I did, I think, about 15 or 16 years ago, which is based on the same sort of experience. It's actually become like a place that I can just go. It's not even a place, but let's say kind of a quality of mind that's sort of reflective, and it's like a kind of a mode that I can go into sometimes. And it's just to capture that feeling, the images are to capture that feeling. I think
That's like taking the third eye to the next level.
I think it's got to be related. Yeah, it's the same kind of, that's how it feels to me. This is another, I think this is from about 2009 maybe.
So there's no
2008.
computer involved. You're just doing this with your hands.
Yeah, I used a pen to do this. And this is not the highest resolution image, but yeah, you can't really see the pen work. It's sort of pointillistic, small dots and slashes. And the drawing was about 30 inches wide, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know. Everything is just made by hand. Very traditional painting and drawing. I think I have another one sort of in that. No, oh yes, I do, right here. This is also something it's not finished, but it's kind of the same phase, or I can zoom in on it a little bit.
That's crazy.
This is
Cool.
a picture of my sweetheart with me bothering her up here.
It's so what do you call it? Mandelbot set, like at the top with like the swirls going in.
Yes, yeah, that the sort of image, the chaos images, the fractal images, I always thought were really fascinating, and they relate really well to traditional artworks also in India and Tibet and medieval Europe. You look through manuscripts, old paintings, you can find a lot of imagery that's amazingly similar. You can see some of these are very, there's a very recent one. It's actually traveling right now. The isometric imagery is something that I kind of really became interested in, or I found very compelling early on, and it's sort of stuck with me.
You assume it's perfect, but then like you can even tell like the dragon fire on on his cheeks is a little slightly different on each one, you know, like there is some slight differences, but man,
Yes,
it's pretty
it's
close.
okay. If you folded the image on itself, it would be surprisingly not symmetrical.
Yeah.
It's very, it's funny. It's I've done that a couple times just to see what it's like, and it's the difference is huge. I don't know. I don't use any measurements or anything. I just start the picture and develop it without any.
Oh, I thought you were like grid paper
particular-
maniac, like do
No,
you know.
no, it's all freehand. No, there's no planning. It just sort of arises that way. So there's always some, a lot of asymmetry, but
You have a lot of like Egyptian iconography in a lot of your paintings, I noticed. Like even like by his mouth, it looks like you have like a fair, like what is that? That's a jackal or
yeah. Oh, like
Horus or
yeah,
yes.
like that. The Typhon. I think they don't know what that was. It's a mystery animal. Nobody knows what it was. So I did see I remember seeing a nature documentary once that had a creature that looked a lot like this creature, and it's actually the same one up at the pink guy up at the tops,
Oh yeah.
top left and right.
Almost like an anteater.
Yeah, he looks kind of like an anteater. I feel like it's a close relative of an anteater, or maybe pigs and anteaters are closely related. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
It's a little bit like a pig too, but a strange kind of pig.
So even those bigger mandalas that you do, are those free-handed?
Yeah, you mean, for example, like something like this, for example?
Yeah.
It's painted freehand, but I used a compass and a straight edge to lay it out.
So I had a interesting like lucid dream recently where I basically saw the earth as a realm, and it was in a like flower of life like this, interconnected, And that everywhere that it interconnects is like basically where other dimensions overlap with ours, and except it was 3D, so it would have been like this inside of Rubik's cube, except the size of the ocean.
Yes.
So that's really, like, when I see something like this, that's just, it's like a 3D flower of life.
Yes, and it's really interesting that you say that, because this pattern and another one that I've worked with a bit, this is based on sevens, one that it's based on fives. I did a number of things, paintings like this, and slowly realized that, I mean, it's a very strict arrangement. It's a precise pattern that has a center, and it moves outward from the center in a semi-repeating form. It's infinite, but it also works in 3 dimensions, and the relationships at each sort of, what would the word be, like nesting sort of layer as you go outward. They remain, they're the same type of relationships, but with slight variations. And it will go out infinitely. It works in 2 dimensions and in 3 dimensions as well. But
So you did like,
visualizing
did you do like 3, 6, and 9s, or like you tried all different numbers for different, like, I don't even know what you call these, but they're almost like they're kind of like mandalas, but they're,
yeah, they're like I mean, I don't really know what to call them either. They're close to mandalas, but they're very strict geometrical forms, so they're kind of almost like
you have more than
mathematical.
this one though, right? Like I remember seeing a bunch of yours that were,
Yeah, I do. This is one of the first ones that I did, which is based on fives, of course. Again, you have like the same few basic elements: a star, a pentagon, and a diamond shape. Just those 3 shapes, and it will extend infinitely outward from the center with variation as it goes step by step, but the same basic 3 elements, building a pattern it's repeating but also not repeating. I thought that I had discovered this myself, but there's a physicist called Penrose who also discovered this in the 1970s.
who, Robert Penrose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He thought that probably the Arab geometers knew about it, and I'm sure he's right. It's something people figured out a long time ago, but it took me some work to figure out how to do this with a compass and a straight edge. I could see it mentally for a few years before I was able to actually draft it. And then the coloring and so forth, it's another matter completely. Well, here's another five-based pattern. And this was the one specifically that, I mean, I've started to be able to visualize this in 3 dimensions because it works out with the same kind of proportions in 3 dimensions. They're sort of meditations, really, I think is maybe the right way to think of them. It's not exactly a mandala. And I don't know, people have said it's, sacred geometry. I don't know what to make of that, because it doesn't feel religious to me. It's more technical, sort of.
Yeah.
And sacred has a different feel to me, like the word, but whatever, it's just words.
So having all your visions, like, did that make you religious or less so, or what did it just make you? How did you get with all your spirituality set after all that? Because that's some stuff that you went through.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think I was sort of atheistic as a teenager, and naturally interested in, or naturally spiritual as a child, but I think it made me believe. I don't want to say exactly what I believe, but let's say it made me believe in God. Okay. What that means exactly, I don't know. There's something far more that connects everything, all life, all things that live, and things that maybe we don't think of as living, but they live too, in a sense. There's something finally good about all of it, to the extent that I'm not sure I believe in a moral kind of moral quality, the spiritual world, but if there is a moral quality, it's good.
I like that.
This one is kind of quite Indian looking, I think, in some ways.
There's that
So
dude again.
Yeah, he's back.
That's like Shiva or something. I don't know
Yes.
what the purple dude is.
Yeah, he's kind of, I think of this as sort of like being Radha and Krishna, but it's not specifically that. It's sort of like they're lovers. And there's something vaguely like a crucifixion happening here, like the lovers are going to be crucified. But at the same time, it's not, it's an angel that's bringing the cross to them. So it's sort of like, it's not an instrument of torture exactly. It's maybe something else.
I like all the hidden eyes. Or not even hidden, but like the eyes in the hands and the eyes on the nipples and the...
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is from a dream specifically that I had also as a teenager. This character, he was blue in my dream, but he came out purple here. And he had an eye in his chest.
Yeah,
I don't know what it means. The eye in the hands is typically considered to be something to do with compassionate work, enlightened action, I think is the other way I put it.
Yeah, I recently was looking into that symbol because it's something about like Hamas or Hamas. Hamas is the name of the eye in the hand.
Is that the protecting hand, the sort of Middle Eastern image?
Yeah, the Middle Eastern thing with the eye. But then there's also like there's like some of the Native American mound cultures had some artifacts found that had engravings of a hand with what looks like an eye in it. So
interesting.
So that's another one of those weird repeating things. Like, why would that be like cross-cultural?
It's interesting. I don't think there's it's something that's fascinated me. I feel also there's really ultimately no explanation for it. It's not, if you say it's like sort of psychological, cultural archetypes. That says a lot, but it doesn't ultimately satisfy some of what you observe, which is kind of just almost identical forms, where it's not just the what's being represented in an image, but the way the image is made. It's so close that you have to think, okay, this isn't just psychological. There's some connection culturally, like there's some underground stream connecting these two things. But then the idea that it's all that all the cultures were directly connected, that to me doesn't quite work either. So I don't know. I feel like it's a mystery ultimately, and I mean I like that. So maybe that's why I settle on that position, because I just happen to like it.
I like that unicorn man.
I'm not sure what his story is, but
so do you know, like when you're painting something, do you know what everything is while you're painting it, or does it sometimes just like...
No, I don't. It's sort of like a person. You interact with a person, you kind of know them, but at the same time they're ultimately mysterious too. So I think early on when I started to see images, and technically in making paintings, when I'm working with images, they arise without my deciding to create them. I just see them and I bring them out, and flesh them out into a form that's clear enough for other people to see. But I just see them on the canvas. And when I first started to experience that, I thought, at times I was so fascinated, like I need to figure out what I'm seeing so I can understand it. But I gave up on that at some point, because it seemed like it would be sort of like, a certain amount of that is fine. Like, if you converse with somebody, you get to know them a little bit, you understand some things about them. Some things are mysterious. There are some things you shouldn't ask. There are some things it's okay to ask. And that's how I am with the images. It's, like that. I only understand so much. Right.
That's interesting. So, yeah, I guess like, how prolific are you? Like, how often do you like, you're painting multiple paintings a year, or?
Well, it changes from year to year. Each painting takes, depending on the amount of work, like a painting like this took a fair amount of work. This painting I did rather quickly, but it was because I painted for long hours. Toward the end of it, I was working on it, I think of, 16 hours a day or something like that.
Did you oil on canvas?
Yes, though lately, recent years, I've done a lot more work in acrylic. This is painted completely in acrylic. Yeah, lately it's been more mostly acrylic. At some point, I'll probably go back to oil. I can show you another one, an earlier painting that I reworked a little bit a couple of months ago. It's an oil painting. And this one was actually it's showing in Australia at the moment. I started it in the early 90s and finished it in 2010, I think, 2011.
Yeah, that's got a lot of Indian or Asian influence to me. Like,
I've found Persian paintings to be really interesting because they kind of cross they connect the East and the West in a really interesting way. There's paintings they have color like Indian painting, and a lot of the forms are close to Chinese painting, but at the same time, you can see a really clear link to Byzantine art. So,
oh, it's kind of got a Bosch,
right
like what's his name? Hirmesh Bosch or whatever. It's kind of got a little bit of that, like, with your little dudes in the background, like sitting on the rocks, like.
Yeah, he is kind of a Bosch-like figure, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's kind of, I think he might be dreaming the whole thing up. He's taking a rest. It's maybe about 2:00 in the afternoon, and he's having a vision.
And like your green dragon man, he's got his almost like fairy hair, like it's like he's a woodland elf or something with his crown of thorns.
This is sort of, I think this idea came actually a little bit from Persian miniatures. That sometimes they have these nature spirits that have horns that are like trees, or just have trees or plants growing out of their heads. And I remember I was painting his hair, and then I thought, I think I should put some trees in here, some flowers.
Yeah.
I think there's another one that's a little bit, this one is quite Indian, actually, the one right next to it. This is one I was sort of talking about earlier. This is a painting I made a few years ago. I think it was in 2018, but it was based on an earlier painting. One of the first paintings I made, and I think it would have been 1988. And then I kept working on it, and I messed it up, and eventually just burned it on a big fire. Because
you burned your original painting?
Yeah. It was a big one. It was, I think, about 5 feet high. This version is smaller. It's been abroad for a few years, and a couple of years, showing in Austria.
Yeah, that one's crazy. That one's cool. Stepping on that chick's head.
Yeah, I think.
Or is he a dude? I don't know.
Originally, it was in the original painting, it was conceived as definitely a guy, but here it's kind of it's ambiguous, and I kind of like that. It's sort of like you've got a male on one side here and a female on the other, and then this one is sort of a little bit of both, a hermaphrodite.
Yeah.
Maybe, or just ambiguous. So I've thought too that this figure at the bottom is kind of reappears at the top.
Okay.
But
yeah.
That's definitely male.
Yeah.
But again, it's a sort of a vision. I don't know exactly what it means.
So when you close your eyes, can you still see things clearly in your head from a long time ago, or is it more like concepts are there?
Well, I would say more images than concepts. Yeah. I mean, you mean specifically things from visions that I had?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say images and also feelings. What I experienced emotionally along with those things that I saw, or wasn't just seeing, because I mean, maybe for that reason, visions is not a great word, because it was sort of like not like watching a movie, but like being in one.
Yeah, experiencing it.
Yeah, experiencing it. And that meant all of the physical, I mean, especially tactile uh, experiences and sounds. I don't really remember ever experiencing smells though. It's kind of interesting come to think of it.
But you
I
experience
forgot.
pain.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And definitely sounds, voices, and definitely lots of visual stuff. But of course, working on paintings, we're going to focus over time on visual parts.
Awesome. Oh, I like the pyramid hats. See, that's totally Egyptian. Like the
Yeah, this is
scarab.
a detail of a larger painting. I put that one in there. This, I mean, it's the actual painting, this thing's about the size of a dime or maybe a quarter. It's tiny. It's a small detail in another painting. I can show it to you in the painting actually. But I mean, this is it's a scarab, and then there's a cube floating above, and two pyramids in the boats, and the two sphinx. I don't know what this means. It's just something I saw, This painting was actually made over a kind of paper that had been dyed and folded, so it was a little bit like a Rorschach test. And I, made a painting on top of it. I'll show you that. Well, here's another detail from it, same one.
That's interesting.
Again, but here's the whole painting.
Oh.
Again, the figure with the squared off ears, but this time female.
Yeah, and the pyramid guys are like in her navel.
Yeah, almost hanging down from this, like there's a sort of Kundalini serpent here with the purple serpent with three heads, and the body is split open at the tail, and that's where this business with the wings and the scarab. It's sort of like, I pictured it like a kind of, this is the sort of the egg, like the unfertilized egg.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sort of like the gestation image.
Those are like, they're kind of like, the dudes are kind of like around a little bit around like where her ovaries would be or something too.
Yes, right. Though, yeah, and then this sort of serpent. I don't know what these things mean, but they appear to me, and they're very compelling. The images, and I just go along with them.
That's definitely like a gnome orgy or something.
Yeah, I thought it's kind of. I mean, this looks like an image of Kali in the middle, and then it's sort of lovers on this side, and then mother and child on this side.
And you have the a turtle in the I don't know if that's a turtle or kind of looks like a turtle in his third eye.
Yes, exactly. It's a turtle. And then, a sort of heart coming up out of that. And then there are these breasts that where a rib cage has been opened. And this is kind of like a goat creature. With the, like a human's skin that's been flayed. You can see the feet. So it's sort of like an opened, the flesh that's opened up, and then something arises out of it. This is kind of like a green man, these two faces. And then there's kind of like an old
dudes next to the
old dude, like like the old images of Jove. There are two of them. And then this kind of arrow going upward. Sorry, maybe that's, too
too like blatant.
Yeah. Maybe it'll get us into trouble. And then we have, this kind of, I don't know, did you ever hear, I heard a few years ago that the possibility that the King Tut's mask was actually originally Nefertiti's mask.
Yeah,
And
I've heard that, or his sister. I've heard of that as well. I mean, because it is pretty feminine, I guess, or androgynous.
I absolutely, I think so. And what somebody, I have to take person's word for it, but what I read was that it says on the back of the mask where the hair is gathered, it says Nefertiti on it.
Oh, okay. I
Like
hadn't
it's
heard that.
hers, something. I don't, there's so many theories about things Egyptian that I'm totally agnostic on all of it, but that definitely caught my eye. I thought it was a really interesting possibility. And maybe I thought about it because it appears in this painting. This was finished in 2008. And I didn't hear about that story with Nefertiti until maybe 10 years afterward or something. So,
But was there anything that we didn't talk on that you kind of thought we should maybe bring up?
well, when it was sort of like I by willpower or by desire more than will, let's say, created, went into the visionary state. Like I began a phase of my life by doing this astral projection, and then, wanting to explore, the inner worlds or something like that, whatever you want to call it, the astral realm, the visionary realm. But really in the end, the way it happened was because there was desire and will, and then also a giving up of my impulse to resist it. And that, is kind of like how I started painting too, which is sort of like I wanted to do something, and I just decided to stop thinking about why I couldn't do it. And really that's all. It was just not stopping myself. And I found amazingly, like I was capable, I had a lot of work to do in terms of developing my abilities, but it was the primary thing was just not stopping myself, not cutting it off, saying, oh, I don't know how to do that. I can't do it. Just forgetting that for a minute. And then it's like, oh, I can do it.
Well, most people, when you hear them talk, it's like a large part of what they're doing is justifying to you why they don't do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Like, it's like that's 90% of the conversations I have with people is like them explaining to me their limitations. And
so why do we do that? I mean, why do people do that?
I really don't know.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because if you hang out with that enough, it permeates into you. You really have to like shake it off and spin off their limitations and just be like, because like again, when I was saying like you lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Like you can really, I hear all these people all the time, and it's really, they'll use socioeconomical, they'll use, like their physical build, like they'll use everything, or you're just like, and I can give you an example of somebody who's 100% overcome that, and like it's like they don't hear it, they don't see it, but it's really weird because like I know in real life very few people who get past that, which is really sucky.
Yeah, it seems like it would be one of the most important lessons to learn.
Well, and then I also find that a lot of people don't know what they want.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how much that has to do with it, because it's almost like I think it is necessary. There has to be the desire, and you have to choose to do it and not to stop yourself. But if you don't have a sense of what you want, I wonder though, I feel like on some level people must know what they want, and it's just more a question of giving themselves the permission to have it or something.
Yeah, or like not admitting what they want to you who's asking what they want, or it's kind of like you were talking earlier about like how it's like your paintings are like a person, like you only know surface level, you don't really know the inner workings of what's really going on.
Yeah, I think we're kind of can be like that with, a person can be like that with themselves too.
Yeah,
maybe, it's sort of like you have to admit it to yourself, and then maybe admit it to other people too, and it's okay. If that's what you feel, then it's okay. If that's what you want, then it's okay, and should allow yourself to do it.
Why it's like there's that concept of victim, savior, and perpetrator. There's, so like those are the three archetypes that like you're always in every scenario, you're choosing which one you want to play. You want to play the victim, the perpetrator, or the savior. And I find it really important for me to examine that within every, if I'm kind of going like, oh, I don't like this situation. Okay, like, whoa, why don't you like this situation? Are you being one of those three archetypes? Okay, like if you are, like, why? And then can we step out of that? Can we be none of those things?
Right.
Like Billy, don't be a hero. You don't have to like, save the world, and you don't have to like be like victim. Like so many people love victim land.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
the biggest thing in the world. And
Yeah.
if you're
So
talking to someone who's in victim land, it like, yeah, but you don't understand. Let me explain more of my limitations to you.
No, wait. There's right.
Wait, my circumstances are you got to hear my circumstances of my victimhood. And I'm like, okay.
Right. Like no, it's different with me. What you're saying is true, but it's different with me because
yeah, not in this case though. In this case it's different. Yeah, so I don't know, like sometimes I'm always having to consciously within my own self pull myself out of like trying to be in a role or a character and be like, okay, let's just like sit and observe this and be the observer and not get emotionally triggered by something, and realize that we don't have to play that game at all. There's also that option.
Well, yeah. Do you think that archetypes are sort of like, you're not really supposed to be any of them? It's sort of like there's something mechanical about it, and it's, well, I've been thinking about it lately, like there's kind of we have part of the way our minds function is just as like storytelling machines, and so there's some aspect of our mind that's constantly trying to draw us into a narrative structure. I mean, it happens politically and socially, but we just do it inside too, where okay, this is a story, and stories have a certain structure, and they've got characters, and you try and make the world into that story, and you push yourself into a role, and you don't. I think
we try to make our life into a story. Sometimes we're all trying to get like that will be the Disney princesses or the Disney, like, we're all trying to like have like this, the Joseph Campbell story arc thing going. And yeah, it's,
but I'm not sure it's a good idea. You know what I mean?
I don't think it's necessarily good idea at all.
Yeah.
But for me, I really tried to like, dude, I have like gone crazy in terms of, I don't watch TV, I don't watch movies, I don't like I don't listen to any news. I look at nubs of ancient architecture all the day, and I read books on like, I don't know, I'm reading a crazy Taoist sexual book about like sexual love healing right now, and like how to like harness your chi into like, so you don't lose life force or something when you do all this other stuff. Anyway, like that's what I'm reading right now. And then I'm also reading like, a book on like like ancient architecture. Like I am trying to completely take away narratives, because I feel like they permeate us in a way that it gets me away from being my own self. And I can sort of feel that.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think they're very, very problematic and very dangerous. Maybe ultimately, something that there's something inevitable about them, but they're extremely dangerous. And if you're not aware of the power they have, you're in trouble.
Well, and it's like it gets them into the, like, I mean, like if you're in the victim mentality, it's that warp tunnel where it's like you're easing into that role, or
Yeah, I think the tendency is so powerful that it's kind of like you've got thousands of generations of people doing this, and the resonance just, it's like a trance. You go into it and it's like hard to get out, because people have been doing it forever, and it's like it's built into the structure of language and culture and all sorts of ways that are hard to even notice. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with
But
that.
yeah, avoiding the news is a good idea.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Well,
all
because
of it.
like all of that is just somebody else's take on spinning a narrative. Like, I mean, whether like it'd be one thing if we were read the facts of the situation that happened by a robot. I'd be down with that, I guess, every once in a while, even though it's selected information. Like
Yeah.
what I mean, like it's so basically I'm supposed to care about every bad thing, every murder, every like political mudslinging, every any like negative aspect that happens on the planet, like I'm supposed to hear about that, like
Well, yeah, I feel like a lot of it has to do with engaging the emotional processes. And maybe the narratives and emotions are really like this,
oh well,
It's
that's what
after,
I was talking about early with that whole like where bigger like personalities are swallowing up little things. Like I feel like um that's the mechanism in which they swallow you. Like they like I feel like it takes away our power as an individual because it puts us into their narratives, anybody's narrative. Like, and it's not just like the royal they, but it's also kind of like it could be who like multiple different bigger things, but they're trying to take your power by like you have to by they get bigger, they get more power by you believing their story, by you believing their narrative. And if you don't believe in their, like I haven't voted since I was 18 years old. I'm 40. And
yeah,
like so many people get super triggered by that and like they get really really mad at me, but I'm just kind of like no, the way you get out of the game is to stop playing the game.
yeah. Well, yeah, you think your your essential energy is like, that's the gold that
You're being ciphered
sort
off
of
of.
being, yeah, it's like that can go into your life or it can go into somebody's story. It's like it goes right out
Yeah.
into the, I don't know what to call it, but I've experienced it before where it's like, okay, my whole emotional body becomes locked into a story that someone's telling on the news or, somewhere else where it doesn't belong. It's like this guy, I traveled in Ireland in 2004 and stayed with this wacky people who lived way out in the country. And like this guy liked to smoke hash and he was, talking to me one night. He was talking about his money. He kept on talking about his money. I was like, what's this guy saying? It didn't make any sense. I thought he's talking about his money, like, paying taxes and stuff like that and going to the pub, but he wasn't. His money was like this thing inside his spirit
Energy
energy or something.
expenditure.
Yeah, it's like, where is it going? He's like, it's down the street at the pub and it's causing trouble right now and I'm trying to get it to come home. He's sitting in front of the fire, like that kind of thing. It's like I don't know. There's just something funny like about that's kind of captured it. It's like vital energy. It's going to be doing something. You can use it for your own life, or you can let somebody suck it out of you and goes into the,
Ether of it.
ether.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I and I'm not like perfect with that. Like I give way too much of my time away to a lot of things that I probably shouldn't, but I mean at least I know what it's like to tap into using your life force for your life.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's always something we can all improve on. But we would
Yeah.
live in such cooler place if more of us did that.
Yeah, I agree totally. I mean, that's what it's our right, I think. Maybe I don't know if that's the best word, but it's the one that comes to mind. It's kind of what we're supposed to do.
It's your birthright. Well,
Yeah.
I mean I had a mushroom experience one time, a different one, but like where I had sort of this epiphany that like the greatest gift you can give the source is to be your own your most unique individualized self. Like you should be the full expression of yourself. Whereas I like the 9 to 5 job, like whatever, working for somebody else's dream is not that's not the full expression of anybody, I don't think, or very few people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really that it was just that simple. It was just kind of like what you can do that's the most productive for the source energy that fragmented itself into being everywhere is to like give it information to learn itself in a new way that it hasn't already gotten it, which is counterproductive to the hive mentality and the uniform, the mono everything that we're trying to do.
Mhm.
Trying to make everybody, oh, you don't think like me, then I hate you. You're going to my version of your hell. Like it's
Yeah, that's it's interesting.
so I don't know like what's true or not true about that, but I just definitely in like the limitation thing, even if somebody who, like I said, I've tasted outside of limitation, but there are times that it's like a hormonal ocean wave that I ride even within a day,
Mhm.
like so like there's like
Uh-huh.
to be completely free of it would be amaze balls. Haven't experienced that 100% yet, but like even if you just have certain portion of your day that you're free of your limitations, even that's like think pretty cool.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I mean, I think that's very good. I think that's the necessary thing. You can't count on absolute perfection all the time, but if you can have perfection at least a little bit every day, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's great.
And do you feel like when you're tapping into, like, is painting for you work now, or do you feel like when you're tapping in, you're expressing your individuality?
Um, yeah, I would say it's that, expression part of it. It's primary. That's the foundational thing. And what's definitely the case now, especially it's like I've got a mortgage, and I've got more bills to pay than I ever have, and in a sense, less time too, because I work on the house and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I need to, it's now like I'm taking that self-expression thing, that feeling that I get. Because for years and years, I mean, it's just lucky I'm really able to work without thinking about, you know, how am I going to make money from doing this? Because I was lucky. I got support. I got, made what I wanted, and people bought it, So I got very used to having that feeling when I work, to the point where I think that's just normal for me now. So I can actually orient myself to, like, I've done a couple commission things in this past year, and it was fun. I was doing what I wanted to do, but at the same time I was doing it like for hire, like it was a job,
So
but it didn't feel like a job. It just felt like I'm doing
see,
it.
that's like very few people in the world have that. That's nice.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with it. I mean, I've got so many things that I want. I have, stuff in this room, but I've got 150 paintings that I'm working on, something like 150. It's over 100.
Wow.
And I don't even know if I'll ever finish all of them, but it's like the work is it's something I love, and I do it. And, um, it's kind of like I think this is all a way of sort of answering your question with a yes. Like, even though it was a two-part, it was a sort of either or question, or multiple choice, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really, yeah. I mean, it is kind of where I get that feeling of, you know, that I'm living the life I'm supposed to lead, or that I'm in the right place, or my energy is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Um, and
That's fulfilling.
Yeah, yeah. And it's nice to, the thing that's been really nice is to be able to kind of, that let's say, there's more latitude for how that can happen than I ever thought. Like, as time goes by, it's like, you know, I actually put a lot of boundaries on the work that I'm letting go of now, because I don't need them anymore. I think I was a little bit like maybe the early phases were like, a vessel, like an alchemical vessel that needed to be contained and under pressure and protected in order for the process to take place. But now that material has been properly refined, and it's kind of like, I don't need that vessel. I don't need to, or the walls that I had around me. I don't really need them so much anymore, because it's just, it's kind of like I'm kind of, this is like maybe mixed, like alchemical mixed metaphors, like, because I don't really have a lot of knowledge about the subject, but so I might be misusing some of the terms, but I think of, the homunculus, like the little miniature, like mini me, that's the artwork, the art,
yeah.
the living, like the artist is like this mini me, and he's fully formed and he can walk around, and I don't have to worry about him getting sick or going off in the wrong direction, or like, because he's already formed. His character is already there. You can go over there and do that thing, or go work for that person for a little bit. It's fine, because his nature is already established. Something like that.
That's cool. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Like, yeah, it's almost like you're there's the concept of the daemon, not the demon, but the daemon, which is like you're like your video game player can create different characters within that, like you could just easily slip into that avatar and it just no brainer, and then you can go back into the the main video game player. And so yeah, like you basically can create different avatars for different roles that you can just, they're perfectly formed when you go in. Yeah, there's something about like that, it's called I don't know, Anthony Peake talks a lot about that. But okay, yeah, this is really
no, the only thing that that occurred to me was to try and draw you out about your artistic career, but I'm the guest here, not the host, so I can't really, honestly, I can't think of anything in particular. There are, a bunch of paintings I didn't really show, but that doesn't matter. I just threw together what I thought might go. So
it is interesting. Like, I've never talked about the art stuff on my channel, but I mean, I have, my undergrad is in studio art. I did painting and I was a natural sculptor. I was always able to build whatever I wanted out of clay. I really like sculpting stuff. And then I think it was one of those things where my mom was an artist. She was really good as well, but she taught art and stuff, and she was always pushing me. Or I wouldn't say pushing me, but she was always just like, you're an artist, you need to be an artist. And I was like, I almost had to rebel against being an artist because everybody thought I was going to be an artist and that I could, so I had some weird stuff with that. But anyway, I then went to college and became, I also, like, I graduated with an art history degree and then a minor in studio art. And then I went to grad school in Sotheby's in London and did that. I've worked at auction houses. I've worked at galleries, museums, and then I owned my own art gallery from I don't know, about like 4 or 5 years in Manhattan, and that was like a pop-up gallery thing. And I would just go around and I would say, like, look, I'm not going to pay you rent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to stage it, make it look like an art gallery. I'm going to help you sell your building. And then I would go around to like all the different art schools, and I would look at people who had graduated with their MFA and were still working 5 years after, at least, because I found throughout my time that if you get people right out of art school, they may not, like 5-10 years from now, they might not even be artists anymore, or they might not be sticking with it. So like, I wanted people who were like dedicated to the craft, because like that would increase the, just the value of their revoir of work or whatever. And so you could get more money for it. It's like, so I was looking for like mid-career kind of thing. And yeah, I would just create a bunch of like group shows, and I had a couple of solo shows, but I basically would have like every 4 to 6 weeks I would have another show with between 10 to 30 artists work in there, and they would be themed. I had a lot of themed shows, like Yeah, and it was great. It was super fun. I had a blast with it. It was like all out. Like I was the biggest hustler I've ever met in my life. And at the same time, like I didn't go anywhere. Every resource, every dime, everything I did was just to living in New York City. And I got to a point where I hated it, and I hated the dealers, or not the dealers. I hated the artists because they just had no understanding of how hard I was working, and they were just so like in la la land half the time. And then the collectors were just absolutely the most pompous people I'd ever met in my entire life. And then I realized the way that our structure of it now, like if you want to go into the business aspect of art, is it's just kind of like a dick measuring contest for the elite. It wasn't about like they wouldn't care like the imagery or like what the signal really means. It's just more like, will this make me look super rich and important to my friends? Like, right. How will this look boost my set? That was kind of not all of them, obviously, but that's a gross generalization, but that was the generalization that I kind of got to. I mean, I even had like, man, I don't know, I won't say who, but I had a big CEO of a company like just come in, like buy a painting for like 15,000. Then he's like, I want you to come and hang it for me. And then I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. So like I had to go to his apartment, and I took somebody else there, and I opened the door, and they like hand me a drill, and it's just like, figure out where to put it. And you're just like, oh, okay. Just really bizarre. Like the whole entire, you're dealing with like the people who are going to pay enough to make it worth an artist's time for stuff like this typically were not connected to reality, and then so it was like herding cats. The entire thing was the giant game of herding cats. And I did it for about 5 years, and I was like, yeah, this was fun, this was real, I'm gonna go do anything else.
Like anything in like all uppercase,
like anything else but this. Yeah. So I think like, I still for my own self, like I've taught painting lessons a little bit, and like I'll paint and I'll sculpt, and like I love to just like, doodle and stuff all the time, but I don't know that I would ever sell anything. And it's just more for like the love of the craft for me. And then I'm an appreciator, and, I'd like buy stuff if I can of my own little collection going. But man, the way we've almost, I have a lot of thoughts on the way we've bastardized the art world in terms of it shouldn't be just for the elite. Like it's almost like a subconscious, a person with it like an extra $500 should figure out a way to, or everybody should have at least one or two like real paintings in their living room, rather than like something you got from IKEA, or like it enhances your environment, and you're in your signature of a way that you could connect to something aesthetic that like if we all did that, there would be a real market for artists. But as it stands, there's just so very few that actually can make a full living on their whole life off of it. And it really shouldn't be like that, because from my estimation, at least 1 to 10% of the population is born an artist. But there's really only room for like 0.1% of us to be professional artists. So there's so many that aren't getting to be their full creative self, because it's so difficult to make and to be creative enough to figure out how to, in addition to being a creator, being able to figure out the douchebag monetary system of it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I understand everything you're saying. I think it's not a very strange world, and none of it seems quite right. What you said about, I feel like I've been really lucky, but it's kind of an aberration. I mean, most of it seems like it's not fair. And the thing you're talking about with the kind of art as kind of it's just like some item for creating social distinction. It seems unfortunate because it can be so much more than that. And some things, I don't like to disparage anything that anyone makes, but I feel like I've noticed at times that I can't believe that anybody what's exalted as the best. It's exalted because it's just somehow managed to become valuable, not because
your
of its
Damien Hirst dot paintings or something. You're going like, come on, like, yeah.
Well, yeah. Is it something like that? Is it actually worth 10,000 times as much as anything else? No, probably not. It doesn't have that much more value than other things, but for reasons that are maybe not the best reasons, it does become the most valuable. And
yeah. Well, then that's that. It's a virtue signal, like, this is a recognizable symbol of wealth, and so I get it because they're one-offs. A lot of things are one-offs, and so like that's, it's a commodity that can distinguish you from having this versus others. But I do feel like just a lot of people just think that it's something they can never I don't know, they can never attain, or it's like not ever going to be in their house, their wheelhouse of whatever. So I think that's the average human in the planet. So they don't ever look into supporting artists or to finding or to having or whatever. Whereas we would have a different world if we all like saw the value in making our spaces aesthetic and not uniform. We have a really weird tendency. We really do. I don't know if it's like a reptilian like versus the mammalian brain thing of like the hive mind thing, but there is a definite like push to be like others, so if oh, okay, are we doing gray walls now? Okay, let's all do gray walls. And then yeah, oh, what's really popular? A cross wall. Okay, you want a bunch of cross wall. Oh no, you know what else is really popular? Like pictures of doorknobs. Okay, let's do like art, there's it's like it's about trending versus like what's speaks to you as a human.
Yeah, it seems like a sort of shortcut, to really to create something beautiful is really difficult. And I think even to see beauty, it takes a certain amount of cultivation. It's not necessarily easy to do. I mean, anybody can look at a sunset and feel it. Of course, you don't need to work at that. But a work of art is maybe a little different. It takes a little more self-cultivation to really be able to. It's not just, well, maybe cultivation is the right word because there's reflection and there's emotional work, and it's not just about studying in the sense of, taking in information. It's also taking in feelings and looking at things and reflecting and understanding how it affects you, how it affects other people, whether it's, whether the thing is beautiful or not. I don't know. It's funny. The more I say about it, the more I feel like I don't even understand it. I think art's really mysterious, honestly.
It really is. Even if you were in it every day for decades, you just yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, maybe it's sort of a relief too. I feel like I'm less and less capable of actually really understanding what it is, but also over time, less and less need to. It's sort of the paintings kind of make themselves, and I'm involved actively, but also passively, and there's a lot I don't need to know as long as the thing is sort of reaching its best state as I work on it. That's am I going to say that's good enough? Maybe. I'll just say it's good enough. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
change my mind in the future, but yeah, it's very, and the,
Alright.
the business part of it is bizarre, strange, so
Super bizarre.
unpredictable and crazy. I don't understand it at all. The whole art world, how it all works. I don't know, maybe it's, sometimes I think there is no such thing as the art world. It's just a world. It's just the world, and who knows how it works? Nobody.
That's definitely true. Okay, well, this has been a lot of fun. So tell people how they can find you and where your stuff is.
I have a website. I think actually just a plain old Google search of my name. Sometimes it's Oliverhazardbenson. My middle name is Hazard, and there's stuff to be found that way. But you can also just look Oliver Benson. I have a website, which is alfhari.com, ALFHARI.com. But I'm under my name on Instagram as well, Oliverhazardbenson. And I'm on Facebook too. Don't do a lot with the Facebook. I don't do a ton on Instagram either, but maybe I'll start doing more. I don't know.
Thank you so much for this. This was awesome.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun. Great to talk to you.